We'll leave it at that. Good afternoon.
So, okay. Of course we will pray agape. Don't be so anxious. Just to, okay, I will make that presentation. Τα αδέρφια πίσω δεν ξέρουν αγγλικά. Δεν μιλάτε αγγλικά. Περίμενα, θα σου πω μετά. Λοιπόν. So, Sister Lisa Gabriela, she communicated with me through Sangita, and she wanted to visit Greece. They're having a project. She studied theology and psychology as well. Her theology is the minor and the major is psychology. And she wanted to visit Greece. She's making a tour, you know, with an independent ministry, you know, cooperating with the Adventist Church. Just trying to present the developmental stages, you know, of the children, the child's development. And we will include somehow the stress and anxiety because we talk about this. I don't know how you are going to make it. It's something that, of course, is important for all of us because for those of us that we have children is important, but also for those of us that we are going to meet children is also very important. Okay, so even if you don't have them, especially talking about the youth, okay, it doesn't mean that it's not something useful. Okay, and anyway, we have nephews, nieces, we have general children are part of our lives. Okay. So I wish all the best.
Thank you.
I wish you every success, not only here, but in all the effort.
Thank you. Thank
you.
Yeah.
She's coming from U.S., Arizona, okay? But her origin is from Mexico.
Yes.
So you have Mexico, it's her mother here, it's another friend from the U.S. Welcome. Yes, yes. The mamatis, her mother speaks only Spanish, so we're going to be more Pentecostal somehow.
The gift of languages, right?
Okay, yes, the gift of tongues.
Yeah.
So, okay, the lecture is going to be in English, so that's going to be more convenient because the translation will require double time, plus the terminology it will be difficult. So that's it. I hope you enjoy. Let us stand and pray. Okay? Sam, θέλεις να μας προσευχηθείς?
Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity that we have. We thank you for everything you have done in our life, especially this Holy Sabbath. The morning, the lesson you gave to us, and now we are continuing the lesson. We pray that you will be with us, especially our sister who is going to give us this lesson. Let your Holy Spirit be with her, and everything that we are going to learn, Father, we can put into practice. Help us and bless everyone. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Sit down. We have the people who doesn't speak English.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So some of you were with me this morning, so I'm sorry I'm repeating again. I had the privilege to be with the youth doing Sabbath school, which I really get very inspired when young people use their brains to be critical thinkers about the Bible and about their spiritual walk. So I really enjoyed being with them this morning. As I shared earlier, my colleague and friend, Tiago Baltasar, and I have been building this project that we're taking around the globe. We called it Connected Institute. The purpose of it is to grow a global community where every person is connected to purpose, to presence, and to each other. Meaning purpose, connected to God, the spiritual aspects, presence, yourself, your individual self, how God created you to be with your strengths and weaknesses, and to each other in community, being a faith-based community, organizations, friends, colleagues in your field, using part of neuroscience and also theological perspectives. We will be approaching this through classes, through coaching, and transformative experiences where you can experience healing, growth, and also meaningful connections, inviting people of all walks of life to develop their full potential. So I want to say thank you for Pastor Yanis for providing the space and time to have this opportunity to interact. The main goal of all this is that you would be proactive in what you do in your life for these three pillars: the spiritual, the self, and others. This is a link you can use with your phone, the QR code. If you want to have more information, you can send your email, and I'll show it at the end as well too. But this afternoon, Pastor Yanis mentioned, that it would be a great opportunity for me to share about anxiety and depression. What I'm going to be sharing tonight, it's mostly about reframing relationships. And yes, this focuses mostly sometimes relationships between parents and children, but you're going to get a lot of information about how our brain works and the fundamental aspects that are essential to develop healthy relationships later on in life. It's applicable to everyone, not only parents and children, but would be applicable to the individual and your own journey. If you have experienced trauma or your parents have experienced trauma, you'll be able to understand a lot of things that you might question about why do I behave this way? Why do I respond to these things this way? So I hope it's beneficial in one way or another. Through this website, the Health Data Organization, the mental health before COVID-19, I mean, we all know COVID, right? We're part of that generation. What was before and what was after. I'm not sure if it's showing. It's very small, the numbers that you'll see up there. But if you start from the end, it's 0 ages to 95 years old. Let me see if I have, yeah, you see here. So I listed some of the mental health illnesses, and this is specifically for Greece, for both genders, female and male, in 2021. This was the one on the top. It's just other in general, intellectual disabilities, conduct problem disorders, deficit of attention, inattentiveness, autism, eating disorders, anxiety disorders. Notice where I'm putting the arrows so you know the colors. Bipolar, depression, and schizophrenia. There's a few of the mental illnesses that are showing, but in Greece during this year, we notice here that the increment started happening in eating disorders between ages 2 to 4. It increased drastically here, as we see, 5 to 9 years old. From 10 years on, you notice how big of a gap, how it increased is this color, the one that I'm pointing here. But I want us to see specifically about anxiety, which started around the age of 14. Notice here, it's increasingly, and it lowers down as the ages grow further. Depression, it's a little bit more on the red. It would be this area. And it started to be manifested from 5 to 9 years. Notice the increase, this is here. And the next 10 to 14 years, how huge the increase. Think about 15 to 19 years old and notice the expansion is even higher. 20 to 24, it's even more. And right now we see the most predominant ages would say between 15 to, here's the peak, about 44 years old. Not that it's removed fully, but it continues to be. So it's just some of the data that I want you to be aware of. So according to the state of mental health in Greece, according to this article, almost 1 in 5 people, approximately 19% in Greece, experienced mental health issues in 2019. That's equivalent to around 2 million individuals. Depressive disorders affected around an estimate 7%, anxiety around 6%, and alcohol and drug use disorders about 2%. So the analysis from the Global Mental Health Countdown 20 to 30, underscored that Greece lagged behind comparable nations in terms of primary care interventions, policy implementation, prevention, and data monitoring, which means that there was more of a challenge to implement that. The pandemic triggered a sharp global increase in mental health disorders. In 2020, depressive disorders rose about 28%. Remember the initial percentage? And it's about 3,165 cases per 100,000, and anxiety increased around similarly, 4,890 per 100,000. I know it's a lot of numbers, but we'll get more into the practical aspects of it too. So specifically, IHME reported that more than 18% were more depressive and more than 15% were more anxiety disorders globally in 2020 versus 2019. And this is focused in Greece. Pastor Yanis did mention that the more need, and I think that's what he's been observing, it was about depression and anxiety. So this resulted in 53 million additional depressive and 76 million additional anxiety cases worldwide in comparison. So I targeted 2 ages specifically because this presentation was made for that. But Generation Z, those who are teens between 13 and 17, thank you so much. That's fine. Okay. There was a survey done in 2020 where for parents in Greece, about 1,200 parents in Greece, revealed that 35% of their children and adolescents experienced significant psychological impact, including heightened anxiety and depression, particularly associated with parental employment, family conflicts, and poor parental mental health. A longitude study in 2023, also of Greek teens, ages between 12 and 15, showed that physical activity and well-being dropped significantly during the lockdown. Life satisfaction and vitality were lowest early on, then recovered as restrictions eased. Nationally in Greece, pre-COVID, approximately about 11% of adolescents already display mental health symptoms. So the mental symptoms were already present before the pandemic that already warranted professional attention. So the pandemic likely worsened those figures, contributing to about almost more than the double, a little bit more than the double, 24.6%. So, and there was a gap of ages that was lost in between 5 and 14. So just to give you some perspective, when the pandemic came, it triggered already, was already there. So it helped to increase at a higher amount. There was, for Gen Z adults from 18 to 24, a Greek study during the first lockdown found that 14% of young adults reported severe period traumatic distress, with women being more affected, and the intolerance of uncertainty predicted this distress mitigated somewhat by resilience. So across Europe, including Greece, young adults between 18 and 24 reported some of the highest meta levels of anxiety and depression during the pandemic. So I'm not sure if Pastor Yanis has been reading the research and the data, but it's prominent. Either he's reading it or he's seeing it very, very present. Another study that was done in the UK from the Resolution Foundation found that 1 in 3 young adults in this age group now meet the criteria for a common mental health problem, up to 1 in 4 in 2000, driven by economic, social, and pandemic-related pressures. A Greek university student survey found especially high rates of stress, and I think someone asked earlier about the differences between stress and depression. But so there's 3 different: stress, anxiety, and depression during the second pandemic year. So I just want to share a little bit of data so you know what we're dealing with here, particularly in Greece. And I want to bring you back to why does reframing matter? Do you know the term reframing? No? Let's say I'm saying something, I'm using other words to make it easier to understand. Reframing is changing it in a way, is the way we think in one way. I'm going to reframe my thoughts. I'm going to change my thoughts to see it differently. So why does reframing matter? I gave you some data of what we're currently experiencing. How can that help us? How do we need to reframe our ways of thinking to approach that need? Because we know anxiety, we know depression, we know stress. It's very prominent. But now, what are we going to do about it? How can we reframe relationships? And I'm bringing just these questions to think about parents to children, friends between friends, children to parents, partners to partner, church environment in leadership for those who are leading young people. It's important and relevant to be aware of the importance of reframing the relationships we have. So I'm going to show you a video of the first foundation of what happens in the brain, and it's in English. This was created by Harvard University several years ago, but I found it very significant. I'm very inclined into the neurosciences and how our brain works and how God designed us to understand where we come from. So I'll stop. I have 3 short videos, but I'll stop in between to address things and also ask questions. If we place. Oops.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So we just saw how each of us were created by God. Unique and amazing design. How old are you? How old are you? 11. You're the youngest here, right? Is it you are about the same age? We have 2 11 years old. When you were a baby, you know, you were going through these facets just like all of us. No matter the culture, no matter the upbringing, we all were going through the same. That's how God designs us. Now, whatever happened in the womb of our parents when we were there, we carry some of that. Some of us are curious enough to ask our parents about, you know, what was it when we were inside? Did they have stress? Did they went through economic hardships? Did they struggle? Was there violence around them? Was there needs, emotions? Because everything is communicated. As we grow and develop, parents are in charge of taking a lot of the care about us, around us, and we grow. Remember earlier, or I was talking in the message earlier about when we try something for the first time, there's a lot of energy that goes into until it becomes so automatic. That's the neurological connectivity that's happening in the brain. When I think about this, I think about the amazing design God created us all to be. This second video talks about the second stage. I just don't know. Oh, there you go.
The key to forming strong brain architecture is what's known as serve and return interaction with adults. In this developmental game, new neural connections form in the brain as young children instinctively serve through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures. And adults return the serve, responding in a very directed, meaningful way. It starts very early in life when a baby coos and the adult interacts and directs the baby's attention to a face or hand. This interaction forms the foundation of brain architecture upon which all future development will be built. It helps create neural connections between all the different areas of the brain, building the emotional and cognitive skills children need in life. For example, here's how it works for literacy and language skills. When the baby sees an object, the adult says its name. This makes connections in the baby's brain between particular sounds and their corresponding objects. Later, adults show young children that those objects and sounds can also be represented by marks on a page. With continued support from adults, children then learn how to decipher writing and eventually to write themselves. Each stage builds on what came before. Ensuring that children have adult caregivers who consistently engage in serve and return interaction, beginning in infancy, builds a foundation in the brain for all the learning, behavior, and health that follow.
Did you pick up something different than the first video? Did you notice something different? Interactions are important. As a baby, the interactions your parents have with you, it's relevant to the connection and how you later communicate. When that's lacking, when that didn't happen, you don't develop that area as strong as someone who is more relational. Sometimes you might think as an adult, why am I not able to connect with people? Perhaps you didn't develop that during younger stages. That just makes you approach things differently. But all the foundation that it's built on your brain back then impacts as you behave later on in life. Now, when you see the neurological connectivity happening, there's also something we call pruning. What you don't use, you lose. I don't know if you heard that term. If you don't keep on doing something, you're gonna lose it because you're not exercising that much in order for it to be part of your automatic. We all have different strengths in this room. We all have like areas that we need more reinforcement, that we're not so good at it. The older that we get, the more stronger those neural pathways become. And you become more efficient about solving problems. But you might need more energy to develop something new if you start at a younger age. There's two stages in life where a lot of neurons are happening in our brain. One is when you're about 2 to 3 years, when you're an infant. And the second one, it's when you're in puberty. It's a whole explosion of neurons going on in your brain. That doesn't mean that we can never learn, because back in 1995 was discovered, the new neurons were born, which means that we all have the opportunity and possibility to develop new skills. Obviously, it will take longer for those who are much older than for those who are younger. So know that whatever you want to learn, start right now if you want to be very proficient later on. If you have a question, you feel free to.
How it can be avoided so that the child will not inherit that? Or how can escape from the depression that comes from the mother, if the mother has?
Yeah. So we are predisposed at a higher range because the mother biologically is carrying that gene. Like genetically, the child is exposed to that. We don't know the child development, the exposure, what's going to happen afterwards, but that's where the environment is either helpful or helps that to develop at a capacity that would kind of probably fall into depression as well too. So this last video, it's the third one, the last, just talks about how toxic stress derails of healthy development. If a child, if you were in the womb and your mother went through trauma or situations that impacted, it most likely will impact the child. But toxic stress prunes our brain, and we lose the ability of some people. They take longer to speak. They take longer to walk. And some of it has to do with toxic stress.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
So a couple of things just to keep in mind. Toxic stress impacts. These we're talking about infants, but if we think about our own circumstances, stress impacts. We cannot focus, we cannot process logically when we're dealing with strong emotions. That's the first thing that we need to address. When it comes to trauma, and I talk a lot about trauma, I recently completed a course on regards to that, but you need to address that in order for you to feel safe and be able to reason and process with logic. I cannot be talking to you about God if you're dealing with hunger, or if you're dealing with an emotional crisis within your home because your focus is in resolving the immediate circumstances. So it's important to keep in mind, being in the church or being in school, being in college, being with friends, being with colleagues, if there's a tension that it's impacting you emotionally, your ability to process, it's not gonna be at its best. This is where being compassionate about yourself comes into play. Understand the circumstances for you to be able to address or for you to be able to communicate in order to give space to yourself so you would be able to talk or discuss this at a later time. Sometimes when we have arguments with our parents, we might not be able to really reason with them, and we might need some space to process things, and we all deserve that space. When there's issues with relationships, in between parents, sometimes you need to give some space and be okay with having that space and coming back to address the matter when both of you are less emotionally involved. Because we build walls rather than building bridges. So if brains are built like a house, early matters. Whenever you become parents, keep that in mind. Early matters. Materials, ingredients are of consequence. Everything that you do, it's fundamentally important. Timing matters as well too. It's an active process. Early quality affects later outcomes. For those of us, which is most of us, if there's areas that were not supplied when we were young, we might be struggling with it right now, and we don't know where it comes from. But it would be appropriate to go into knowing what happened growing up. That might give you answers to questions that you might be asking about yourself. Why does framing matter? So we know what the word framing matters, right? Are you thinking about yourself in different ways now since we share this information? Do you get any other ways of perceiving that maybe you're not as focused when you think that it's your brain that doesn't work, and it's not necessarily the case. Maybe you're dealing with an emotional situation. Like, why does framing matter? And this is open for discussion. Is it important? Say that again? It removes guilt, yes. Yes, it removes guilt and shame that you're not capable, that you're not sufficient enough to do and move on with life. So these are tools I'm giving back, something that we can all work with. How can we reframe relationships? How do we reframe relationships when they have been broken? Friends, significant others? Mm-hmm.
If we destroy relationships, we need to change our minds, and we need to have patience. Make moving step by step. Mm-hmm. And if it God help us, we can unite again.
Yes.
Step by step, repent, change our life.
Mm-hmm. Taking step by step, if God helps us to build closer relationships and better connections. Early, I was sharing about one of the areas that we're working is with connecting with each other. It's hard, and when there's partnership, couples, you bring a whole history, just as the other person brings a whole history. I don't know if any one of you are dating or have a relationship, but that's the person that's closest to you. That's the person who might get to know the most intimate things, that they might say something that might hurt you. Working and having healthy relationships is important. In your case, your siblings, your sisters, your brothers, sometimes your parents, Sometimes parents who have not dealt with their circumstances or their situations that belongs to them are triggered by children, because you might have the same behavior as your parent or your father or your mother, and they don't recognize where it's coming from. And that can break relationships. The enemy wants us to be disconnected in a way, because the more we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to forming better relationships with others. And when you have a good relationship with someone that accepts you just as you are, you flourish. because you're in power. They're with you in the strength and the good times, and they're good with you in the worst times as well too. So it's just something to keep in mind. How can we reform relationships? I'm going to give you a couple of aspects to know how to navigate that. Navigate. Sometimes people want to be guided through harsh situations and systems. Children don't understand that. Children don't understand like an adult does. A young adult doesn't understand like a 40 or 50-year-old does. How do we build bridges in between? We navigate with them. We hear them. We reason with them. We walk with them and allow them to be them, not us imposing what they need to think, because they're their own persona. 2, empower. Build confidence to take charge of their life. Build them up. Just like we need that too as adults, they need it as well too. Children even more. But it's just giving you the tools for them to develop and explore. Sometimes for parents it's very hard to allow children make mistakes or fail in a way because they don't want to see you hurting. Some parents are overprotective. But, and we were talking this in the morning, that sometimes pain and failing, it's important for us to be able to grow. Advocate. Stand up for those that need it when it's needed. As an adult, or for among other adults, as a parent for your child, as an older leader in the church for the young, and set boundaries. You have to put in place limits that keep you on track. If you know that if you do something, it's gonna give you this consequence, you want to make your own boundaries for that. For the adults as well too. If you know this behavior is gonna continue to lead you to an area that's gonna derail you from where you wanna go, set boundaries. If you know you have a sweet tooth and like sweets, don't buy packages of sweets and have it at home. Set your boundaries, yeah. Even as simple as that. If you limit, it's not black and white. You know, it's not black and white. You gradually grow into these things. Some ideas. You can offer information and practical help to solve a problem, or lend them something they may need. There's a mistake on the word there. Show young people how to ask for help when they need it. That's the journey of connecting different generations, building bridges rather than separate them. The young are very different than our youths. Shift levels of support. Give more support when young people are struggling and less when they are making progress. Set back as their skills and confidence build. And obviously I'm making a difference between adults and young people, but this also comes within young, other young, among young and among adults. If you think about a relationship about your age as well too, you don't have to create codependency and resolve everything for the other person. When we do that, we're saying we don't trust them enough to be able to learn or do what it belongs to them. It's very hard to step back and allow them to make a decision, because there's a tendency for us to make decisions for others. When it comes to children, when you teach your child a skill, demonstrate by breaking it into smaller steps. As adults in the church, don't expect the young to know just by you saying it once. Don't expect their spiritual life will be as mature as someone who has been in that journey for a long time. Be patient. I was very impressed with the kind of discussions that were going in Sabbath school this morning. They have developed critical thinking to a degree that makes them ask questions. And there were 25, 26, 16, 14. It was a very diverse group. But they are doing it on their own. No one's forcing them to think, to process, to question. And then when they're, and children in this case, when they're not getting the help they need, find people who can address the issue. There might be things, and it's important to understand your limitations. If you're not prepared, either professionally or through life experience, refer them to others. Friends as well too. Sometimes people like to become counselors to others when they don't know how to help the person going through depression perhaps. It's important to know your limitations and make referrals. So developmental relationships are the roots that support children as they grow. Like roots, positive relationships nourish, support, and stabilize development. They offer guidance, encouragement, and new opportunities. Strong roots are what allows children and young people to thrive, to meet their potential, and to contribute to the communities and our society. As a church, I think we have the responsibility to fuel that, to fuel them to be great citizens of the world or those coming in newer generations. People struggle with faith as well too. Some people are more open than others to believe in an existing God. How is my walk? How is my life? How are my experiences going to impact those who come before me? You're a generation, but there's a newer generation ahead of you. In a way, it's a responsibility, for you to pass it along. That's the history of, that's the journey of all history, story by story being told. There's a Bible verse that I would like to close with tonight, though. Train up your child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. Our lifespan is short. 0 to, if anything, 86, 90. Some people still get to 100, but not much, not many. Someone from 0 to 12, it's in that specific developmental stage. Someone from 13 to early 25, it's very unique. The teens are very different. The 20 up to 25, you're trying to find your identity. You're exploring, you're questioning, where am I going to go, what I'm going to do? I come to church. What faith? What's my faith? Is this a real God? It's something I want to carry with me in my life. You're questioning quite a bit. Between 20 and 30, everything you do in between that stage, it's absorbing, because once you hit 30 and up, you're integrating all your knowledge. So whatever you do, whatever you discipline yourself to, do it with your heart, explore. And I hope adults are patient enough to allow you to explore and know that one mistake does not define your persona. But then 30, 40, you start integrating a lot of your knowledge. 40 to 50, then comes another family. You might create a family, you might have children of your own. And there's another stage, 60, 75, 80. They're questioning other questions that you guys don't even talk about right now. The end of life. Am I going to be able to experience my grandchildren? We all are questioning depending on where we are. So that's the beauty of our whole life. And I've always encouraged people to allow the younger to experience their stage, to question, to be in their stage, and individually live your stage as much as you can. Because that's only one life that we have. That's the only life that God has given us. And whatever we do, it's either going to continue to enrich us individually and our communities or not. We'll be more miserable, we'll be more depressed, and we all go through different facets in life. So tonight I wanted to share with you about being connecting. Connect, it means about connection. The 3 areas that we're sharing with everyone's connecting with God if you are looking to be grounded spiritually. And as I shared earlier in the message, there's a lot of biblical principles that transfer to your life that would change your life and your dynamics with others. connect to who you are, who God created you to be. The more you know yourself, the more integrated to who you are and more confident you'll become, because you know and understand. I mean, this never gonna end until we die. You think the older people are very confident? They might be confident to certain areas, but they're also questioning things that they've never been exposed. We all question. And relationships. Surround yourself with healthy relationships. If you're not strong enough to lead, don't surround yourself by relationships that will drown you down, because, you know, it has its consequences. And God created us with purpose for us to live a fulfilling life. So these are the 3 areas. And again, I'm going to share again for those who saw it this morning. The church has developed many, many resources, but these are 2 resources I tend to share wherever I go. For those who are not here in the morning, downstairs. But, excuse me. These are amazing resources. The first one is created by Dr. Chris Vogel, How to Study the Bible Like Never Before. They're available in English and German. And Reminded, that it's all about mental health. Currently, they've been already posting for trauma, suicide, anxiety, and depression. Has clips, has videos, has articles. It's a great team of professionals who have been working diligently for the last few years, and is now available to all. So wherever I go, I'd like to share these additional resources that you can make access to it. They're very simple to understand, both resources, and very easy to apply. That would go more in depth about depression, more about anxiety, that I'm not touching today. This is us. You know, this is the project that we're bringing, that aspects of connection. But I did want to share, the reason why I share what I shared today is just so you understand that that's nature. God created us all that way. When we bring these 2 pieces together of being human and being spiritual, they go along. They're not 2 separate entities. God created us with the capacity to think, with the capacity to make choices, with the capacity to decide to cut those chains that we might have been drawing from previous generations that have impacted us in our life now. God can help us navigate that through, around surrounding with the right people, with professionals, or making different choices. Don't be afraid to take a step forward, to become healthier yourself, you know, knowing about God and changing, you know, our direction. Now more than anything, I think we are needing to be connected with each other, to be connected to God, to look up when things are not clear in front of us. Earlier was mentioned a lot about the fear with the war, anxiety, depression, and questioning, where is God in all this picture? God is still present, and he continues to reveal himself to us through his word, through interactions with others, through prayer. Sometimes answers comes having conversation with others. Sometimes you don't even have to specifically state where you're going through, but it is important to stay connected. And I hope somehow this has been beneficial to you. And like I encouraged the earlier group, I encourage you to take proactive steps, to keep grounded, to keep moving forward, to live a life that fulfills, not leaving the reality aside, because it's important to be realistic and know that there's pain, that there's suffering around us, but there's also a stronger God, a more powerful God that has hope. And what happens in the brain when hope is present, neuroscientifically, our brain develops these endorphins, like they're similar to morphine. What does morphine do? Do you know what morphine does? What was that? Reduces pain. Hope, when hope is in our mind, that's the same chemicals, processes that happen because you're reframing your thoughts. You know, my father passed away 3 months ago. My sisters and I were around his bed when he did his last breath. And I was just sharing a personal experience just to allude to the fact of what happened in that moment. I never expected to happen that way, but the machine went off and it was like, ooh, like it's gone. In my emotions were so quick, in a millisecond, I felt there was a disconnect. And right in that disconnect, I remember what people have shared in the church, that when Jesus felt God was remove himself, like he felt disconnected, it was the end of the world. In that millisecond, I felt that when my father, like it's his last breath, he's no longer here, like it's nothing. But it was like this, because the hope and the faith I have that one day I would see him, that's my faith and my belief. It might not happen, I don't know, but that's what I believe. And it was just a millisecond that brought me peace in the midst of pain, of sadness, of tears. It was something, it's hard for me to explain in words, but I felt that peace. And through the whole journey of mourning, my experience has been very unique to that holding strong. I do cry when I talk about him, or my memories that he's no longer here, but there's an aspect to it. That's that hope, that's the peace that helps me to carry on and move on with life and honor his teachings. He was not a perfect man. And I asked for permission to share his story because I thought it was very significant. He was not a perfect man. There were a lot of things that he did that impact me individually, emotionally, but there were also many things that he did that helped me be the person I am today. He made choices that impact our family. But through all his life, he always remained consistent and looking for God. And somehow, picking himself up and moving forward. When I see the whole journey of his life, I see from beginning to end, and I see that when you are consistent, when you look for a God to carry you through the hardships of life, at the end, you're not defined by your circumstances that derail you from that journey. You're more than that. For God, and my sisters and I shared and said, God was, our father was like a David. He was perfect before God's eyes. And I think we are all perfect before God's eyes. Whatever we have done, wherever we've come from, he is still existing. And I think there's a lot of things that can happen when we continue to be faithful and seek him as an important figure in our life. So tonight I would just encourage you, to take proactive steps. Don't let information comes and goes. These might come and go. But my prayer is that when you leave this place, at least one thing, either if it's in the morning or in the afternoon, that you take with you, that you could carry on and pass it along. Because we're in this world for a short time. So I hope you're being blessed. And I don't know if anyone has any questions or any input or additional comments. If not, I think we can move forward and conclude with the session. Yes. Say that again. Sometimes it comes from parents. Sometimes it comes from the environment. The church does a lot for it too without you even knowing. Every exposure that the child gets, and then the child at one point will be reasoning and processing on their own. Education, I would say. As grandparents, sometimes they see their children, grandchildren. You don't have a lot of control over those things, but prayer can lead people through to expose them. Yeah. Yeah, I can go ahead and put it. Maybe I can do, oh, is that depression? That would be depression or anxiety? Maybe anxiety? Yeah. Let me share a video of you with reminder, the last link. Uh-huh.
Something because it's important for me for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If we destroy an affair, erotic or friendship, we need to make dialogue and destroy our egoism. And if we, it's important to have a relationship is to have trusting and say the truth.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it hurts. You know, but ego and pride are very, for all of us. Ego and pride.
No trusting, there is no relationship.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let me show you this video and like access this. I'm gonna show you I'm gonna share with you these two videos. One is in anxiety and one is in depression. Just because a couple of you saw the ones in. Okay.
What is anxiety? We live in a world surrounded by all kinds of dangers.
It's not showing? It's not showing, but I don't know how to.
It's an extend. It has to be on mirroring if it is on Firefox, for example.
How
Is
to.
it on Firefox?
Say that again?
Is the video on Firefox on YouTube?
Yes. No, it's on a website.
So it has to be on.
I think it was disconnected, maybe.
Can I see?
Yeah.
The display is not showing. Why is it not showing here?
Do I unplug it and plug it in?
Maybe if we end the
There you go. There you
presentation,
go. There you go.
we have to end the presentation probably.
Okay.
How to end
Quit.
it?
Just quit. Uh-huh. Oh, there you go. You have to remove that, I guess.
This one.
Try later. It's here, I think. Click on. No.
Let's see.
Choose to mirror from the menu. But it will go to the website.
It should show here. Is the keynote? No, it's closed.
No, it's on website.
Mm.
Let me,
What is the website?
let me see. I think it's, no. Let me see. I can do it just here.
No, remind it to your. Okay, I can show it from this computer.
Okay. Then show the anxiety. And put the anxiety first, and then we'll do the depression. The first and the second. .org. Animations. Then put the anxiety and then the depressions. That one on the bottom. Which one you're playing? So this is a video of depression first, and then I'll put the one for anxiety.
What is depression?
Do you need the microphone?
Depression.
you.
Means that something is pushed down. In depressive disorders, our mood, interest. What is depression? Depression means that something is pushed down. In depressive disorders, our mood, interests, and energy are what is pushed down. We may all feel sad and tired when bad things happen. That is normal. But depression is much more than that. In depression, we may feel sad, angry, and distressed about almost anything. Often, most of all, about ourselves, who we are, and life itself. We may lose interest in whatever used to give us joy and pleasure. We may feel exhausted and tired without having done anything, and even though we rest, we cannot recover strength and energy. Depression is a serious medical illness. It negatively affects how we think, feel, and act. It makes it difficult to work, love, and play. Depression is emotionally painful. Severe cases may be so painful that people give up on life. Depression is a leading cause of death by suicide. People everywhere around the world struggle with depression. Almost 300 million people are suffering from some depressive disorder. Depression affects all kinds of people, any gender, any age, any financial status, any religion, any race, and any ethnicity. Depression is so common that many of us will experience it at some point in life. All of us know someone who struggles with depression. It may be someone in our family, a friend, a neighbor, a classmate, a colleague. Unfortunately, many suffer from depression without telling anyone or getting help, some even without knowing it. Fortunately, there is hope. Depression can be overcome. There are many helpful self-care strategies and treatment options. In the next video, we'll explore the symptoms of depression. What causes depression? About 300 million people worldwide have a depressive disorder. Each person is unique. Each depression is unique. Though the symptoms may be similar, each person's pathway into depression is unique and often complex. In order to recover and heal from depression, it may be necessary to understand what caused the depression in the first place. There are 4 essential dimensions to our lives: the biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. Excessive stress in any of these aspects of our lives may push us down. Let's look closer at each of them. The biological dimension is about what goes on in our bodies. Problems like physical illness, deficient diet, insufficient exercise, sleep deprivation, addictions, and genetic dispositions may increase the risk of depression. The psychological dimension is about what goes on in our minds. The following personality traits may increase our risk of depression: worrying, rumination, perfectionism, negativity, low self-esteem, excessive self-criticism, relational insecurity. Such traits tend to affect our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors negatively. The social dimension is about the context and relationships we live in. Many people suffer traumatic and painful experiences like neglect, abuse, conflicts, loneliness, loss. Such experiences may leave deep wounds and lasting scars. They take time to heal. The spiritual dimension is about whatever gives us a sense of meaning, purpose, significance, and hope. If we feel disconnected from ourselves, family, community, work, nature, or God, life may feel empty and the future bleak. All of us carry burdens others cannot see. All of us have struggles that others do not know. Therefore, we all need kindness, support, and someone to share our burdens with. When each dimension of life is filled with good things, they may lift us up, not push us down. In the next video, we'll explore what goes on in the depressed brain. What is anxiety? We live in a world surrounded by all kinds of dangers. We or someone we love may suffer or die because of illness, accidents, abuse and violence, disasters, war, and conflict. However, rejection and loneliness are the greatest fears and worries for many. Feeling anxious is a normal and healthy response to stressful events. Sometimes, however, we develop excessive fears and worries about potential or imagined dangers. Our brains can be pretty creative in coming up with bad things that could happen. When fears and worries become a persistent, pervasive, and disabling burden, we may suffer from an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illnesses. It is estimated that right now, about 300 million people around the world suffer from an anxiety disorder and need treatment for it. It is also estimated that 1 in 3